What you are about to see is an exchange between Congressman Jamie Raskin and Attorney General Pam Bondi during a Judiciary Committee hearing that was supposed to be about the Department of Justice's oversight. Instead, it turned into a masterclass in deflection. Raskin is trying to get answers on two massive scandals: Donald Trump suing the U.S. government for $10 billion, and the DOJ's disastrous handling of the Epstein files. Watch how she responds with a level of rage that suggests she knows exactly how defenseless her position actually is. Let's watch this hearing, and I will give you my take at the end.
Recognizes the gentleman from Maryland.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by saying I appreciate what you said, Attorney General Bondi, and you said it to me personally, that you take the personal security of every member of Congress seriously and that people can contact you about that. And in these times, that's a very serious matter. So I thank you for that. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7 of the Constitution is the Domestic Emoluments Clause. And it says that the president is limited to his salary in office and cannot receive any other money from the federal government while he's in office. It cannot be increased by $1. This president is the first president in U.S. history who has repeatedly sued the federal government for $230 million for the judicial search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, which was perfectly lawful and was never struck down. But now he's suing the IRS for $10 billion. He's suing the IRS for $10 billion, which I think is around 80% of its annual budget, because his tax returns were leaked. And they were illegally leaked by a private contractor who actually is in prison now, Charles Littlejohn. But he wants $10 billion. Now, well, I want to ask you the question of whether you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for you to settle that $10 billion case or any of the other claims that the president has made against the government. He himself has remarked, it's interesting because I'm the one that makes the deal, right? And he says, I kind of have to work it out with myself. Do you think it would violate the Domestic Emoluments Clause for the president to work out a deal from people who are his subordinates under his unitary executive theory to get money in one of these cases?
I'm not going to discuss pending litigation.
Okay, so theoretically you're saying because his privacy rights were violated in that tax case, and they were. I'm with the president on that. I mean, his Mar-a-Lago thing is ridiculous, but there's no doubt that his tax returns, despite the fact that he promised to release them, despite the fact that every other president released the tax returns, he suffered embarrassment when it showed that he hadn't paid taxes for several years, and he had a right for that not to happen. Now, I want to turn back to the Epstein survivors, because President Trump may have been a little bit embarrassed by the release of those tax returns. How much do you think the claims of these survivors are worth? As the good congressman from Kentucky just pointed out, there were lots of survivors who had decided, for reasons of their own, never to release their names. That determination was represented to people in Congress, and we built it into our federal law that their names could not be released, and yet you published their names, their phone numbers, their addresses, personally identifying information. If Donald Trump can get $10 billion, theoretically, from the Department of Justice, how much should these people get for a far worse violation of their privacy rights and a far greater danger established to them in their lives?
Do you even know who Chase Mulligan is? You're so obsessed with, you don't, do you?
I'm going to teach you the rules again. You're the Attorney General of the United States. We have rules here.
You're obsessed with him.
You're the Attorney General of the United States.
With obsessed with Donald Trump. You have Trump derangement syndrome.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like my time
Mulligan will
restored.
be
I'd like my time
next week
restored.
in your district. In your district, and you don't even know about it, about keeping children safe from online predators.
Time belongs to the gentleman from Maryland. The gentleman can proceed.
Yeah, and I want the whole country to look at this. Because this is the Attorney General of the United States, whose job is law enforcement. We've never had a witness who has misunderstood our rules and been unable to conform his or her conduct to our rules before. We have only 5 minutes, and so we use our time to ask you specific questions.
How long are you giving me to answer?
Excuse me, I'm not yielding to you right now. I'd like that second restored too. So, Ms. Bondi, the way it works is we ask you a question, and you answer it, and if you go off on a wild goose chase, another tangent, you start reading statistics, or you start talking about stuff going on in our district. And by the way, I invite you to my district. Come to my district, but that's not what we're here to do today. Okay? So, and you do that, then we're allowed to say we reclaim our time. At that point, you have to be quiet. You have no choice. You have to be quiet. So I hope you understand the rule at this point. Now, here's what I want to ask you. You're in law enforcement. We've seen all kinds of evidence of crimes. And when we go over to the Department of Justice for the 4 computers for every member of Congress, we see more evidence of crimes. Will you create a joint task force of the Department of Justice and governors and state attorney generals and district attorneys across the country to investigate the crimes that have taken place against these victims and more than 1,000 like them? The DOJ is not doing its job. Will you create a task force with state and local law enforcement to make that happen?
Gentlelady can respond if she wants to.
Thank you, Chairman. He called Chase Mulligan a wild goose chase and didn't even know who he was. He is a defendant in your own district who preyed on girls.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, you know what? If he were part of the Epstein investigation, you wouldn't do anything about it.
Online chat rooms and committed sextortion. Yet he didn't even know in your tiny little district who he was.
Mr. Chairman, she's embarrassing you.
He's about to be
This is your committee, and she is embarrassing you.
Shame on you.
The time of the gentleman has expired. I would remind the committee that last Congress, Secretary Mayorkas was here numerous times, and he wouldn't answer our questions, even when we sent them to him ahead of time in writing. So that's what we've had to deal with. I think the Attorney General is doing just fine. We have votes shortly. I will go to the gentleman from Virginia.
You can feel the desperation radiating off of her in that clip, can't you? That specific brand of loud, performative outrage that people only use when they know they've been caught. But while she was screaming about Chase Mulligan to run out the clock, she was hoping you wouldn't notice the massive $10 billion heist Raskin was actually asking about. So let's break down the 2 critical things she didn't want to answer, because I did some digging, and the details are even worse than Raskin let on. First, the money. Raskin asked if it violates the domestic emoluments clause for Trump to sue the government. Here's the context she refused to provide. On January 29th, Trump filed a lawsuit against the Treasury Department and the IRS demanding $10 billion. Why? Because a private contractor named Charles Littlejohn leaked his tax returns back in 2020. Now, Littlejohn was caught, convicted, and is currently serving 5 years in federal prison. But that's not enough. Trump claims this leak caused him reputational harm, which, let's be honest, his reputation did that on its own, and now he wants the taxpayers to cut him a check. Here is where the Emoluments Clause comes in. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7 of the Constitution says the president receives a fixed salary and shall not receive any other emolument from the United States. The fear was exactly this, that a president would use his power to raid the Treasury. Raskin's point is that under the unitary executive theory, which Trump loves, the president controls the DOJ. So you have a situation where the plaintiff, Trump, effectively controls the defendant, the DOJ, run by his loyalist Pam Bondi. He is suing himself, and he has appointed the person who decides whether to settle the case. It's not a lawsuit, it's a money laundering operation with extra steps. Second, the deflection. She kept shouting, "Do you even know who Chase Mulligan is?" as if this was a gotcha moment. Well, I looked him up. Chase Mulligan is a real person, a predator from Silver Spring, Maryland, who pled guilty to sextortion cases involving minors. It is a heinous crime. But notice the game she is playing. She is using a local criminal case, one that was already prosecuted and resolved with a guilty plea, to distract from the fact that her Department of Justice just released the unredacted names of Jeffrey Epstein's victims while protecting the identities of his powerful associates. I wonder who she's protecting. It's a mystery. She's trying to create a false equivalence. You don't care about this one criminal in your district, so you can't criticize me for mishandling a global sex trafficking ring that implicates my boss. It's a cynical, manipulative tactic designed to silence oversight. She doesn't care about the victims of Chase Mulligan. She's using their trauma as a prop to protect Donald Trump. It means that your privacy is conditional. If you are a survivor of abuse, the Department of Justice is supposed to be your shield. Instead, under her, it has become a weapon. If releasing your name helps distract from the president's scandals, they will do it. It's like calling the police for help and having them post your address on Twitter because the chief of police needs a diversion. We are watching the total collapse of the firewall between the president and the Justice Department. If Trump can sue the agency he runs and get a $10 billion settlement approved by the Attorney General he appointed, the U.S. Treasury becomes his personal piggy bank. According to reports from The Guardian and the Associated Press, this lawsuit is unprecedented. No president has ever sued their own administration for damages while in office. It turns the government into a self-licking ice cream cone of corruption, where the only losers are the taxpayers footing the bill. Is this to improve tax security? No, because the leaker is already in prison. Is it to help victims? Clearly not, as the Epstein survivors in that very hearing room can attest. It is purely to feed the ego and the bank account of one man. Trump is willing to burn down the credibility of the DOJ and re-traumatize victims just to squeeze a settlement out of the federal government that he couldn't get from a private business. As of right now, she is stonewalling. She refuses to say if she will recuse herself from the Trump lawsuit, and she refuses to apologize to the Epstein survivors for the data breach. The Chase Mulligan deflection is all she has left. This isn't just about a heated hearing. It's about a fundamental question. Is the Attorney General the lawyer for the people, or the defense attorney for the president? When she screams at Raskin for Trump derangement syndrome, a literal internet troll talking point, she answers that question. She isn't there to enforce the law. She is there to enforce the omertà. She wants you to focus on the hangnail so you don't notice the patient is dead on the table. But the patient is American justice, and frankly, I think we should be asking for a second opinion. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more clear, fact-based analysis like this, make sure you hit the like button so more people see it. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or questions. I read them and they help guide what I cover next. Share this video with someone who needs to see what's really happening, because independent coverage only spreads when you pass it along. And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss an upload when new stories break.